It's clear that Jesus was a study of people. He would watch them and interact with them like a detective. And he would sort through what was going on in their life and what was happening in their heart. In a sense, he was a spiritual investigator. And the way he did this, like any great lawyer or investigator, was by asking great questions. I wonder if you've ever considered this, that Jesus asks a lot more questions than he answers. Actually, when he's asked questions, he nearly always answers with a question. He doesn't answer it. And this is a skill I think that we can learn, something that we can learn how to engage people with questions in a way that we understand who they are and what it is that's going on in their life, so that we can see the movements of God that are already in their life to help direct them into life with Jesus. Now, I don't know if you've ever really just thought about the power of questions and just kind of how we do that socially. You probably do this intuitively to some degree, that you get to interact with people through questions. That's just kind of social behavior. Imagine like sitting with somebody, or you meet somebody at a cocktail party, and what do? You usually say something like, wow, like, what are you doing here? Like, who do you know here? Or, boy, it's a hot day today, or it's kind of windy outside, or, well, what a beautiful wedding, or, right? You do something like that. What you generally do is start by trying to connect in the local space that you inhabit with someone else. The kind of classic old pickup line is, in a bar, come here often, like it's like trying to connect in the place. And that's what we do. And by the way, that's healthy and normal. It's a way of connecting. If you look at what Jesus does, he notices the geography. Oh, you're here by the pool. Why are you here by the pool? Oh, you're here at the well. Could you give me a drink of water? So that's normal. Then there's usually another layer, and we try to create connection outside of the space we're inhabiting together. So then we ask something like, where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What do you do for a living? I usually don't ask, what do you do for a living? Because sometimes you don't have jobs. So I ask, what do you do day to day? What's your day-to-day life like? That's something I ask. And then they usually spill out some details, and then they might say something about how they're married and they have kids. Oh, wow, how old are your kids? And oh, what are they up to? And what do they do? And oh, that's cool. And it's usually in that question asking that you fill in parts of your own story. You're creating connections. So they say, oh, I'm a lawyer. Go, you know what's funny? I was studying to be a lawyer. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Like, what kind of law do you practice? Something like that, right? So in each of those things, you're mining for connection. You're trying to figure out, oh, where do I fit? I know what's going on there. Now, in the midst of those questions, if we call that a level 2 of deep connection, a level 3 of deep connection, which moves it, is now we'd move to motivational thinking. What is it that happens at the level of their heart, their desires, their dreams, their hopes, their fears? So a really simple move, a simple question is to ask, why did you decide to be a lawyer? Why that type of law? What's it like being a dad for you? You're a new dad. What's it like to have 4 kids versus 3 kids? Man, how are you processing like a move with a new job? How are you making sense of that? So we're trying to understand how people think, how people feel, what they desire. If they're in school, I always ask, well, what's the dream? What are you hoping for? You're studying political science. Whatever. Here's what's interesting about questions like this is it eventually flips the script to where polite society usually means that they ask you a question. And they'll say something like, well, what do you do? Or if you ask them a question of depth like that, they'll ask, well, why do you do what you do? Now, here's where it's interesting. My hope and my prayer for you is that Jesus has so taken over your life, he's so permeated your life, that when somebody asks you motivational questions about how you think, about how you live, why you live the way you do, my hope and my prayer for you is that Jesus somehow lives in there. I think about my money. I think about where I live. I think about my family. I think about my job. I think about my money. I think about my relationships based on Jesus. I hope for things because of Jesus. I desire for things because of Jesus. I regret things because of the life I have with Jesus. See, Jesus lives in the deep places of our life, not just on the surface parts of our life. He doesn't interact a lot of times in like how we love the Broncos or why we eat pizza or the fact that it's windy today or hot today, right? He interacts in the places where you're motivationally wired and built. The truth is that's how it works for other people too. They often have movements of God in their life that they don't realize are there, that you're mining for and you're noticing. See, when you begin to describe what motivates you, hopefully Jesus shows up. And if he doesn't, it's a big question for you to ask, why doesn't he? Why doesn't Jesus show up in how I think about my money, my relationships? But he tends to. And then as you begin to speak about that, it draws people into a picture of what their life could look like with Jesus. It begins to show that this life with Jesus isn't just intellectual, it's not just believing certain kinds of things, but actually shapes and shifts the whole way that you live. And it's usually in this context that you have an opportunity to describe some of your own story. Some of what we've already talked about. You have an opportunity to share what in church we generally call a testimony, but what I would say are just like God moments. How God grabbed a hold of you in interesting ways at these places of your family, your career, where you move, where you live, why you do what you do. So give you some homework here that helps you learn some questions. And some of these questions are questions you can try out, you can practice. And this week, would love for you to try and work on going a layer or two deeper in conversations than you normally do. There might be people you've known for 25 years, 10 years, 5 years, that you've never asked another question about, or you've never shared something deep of your own heart, your own life with them. It's in these deep places and living from a place of depth that we begin to connect in a way that makes sense of our life with Jesus.